Now we'll do an overview of basic front-end template modification. Joomla templates are HTML and CSS code wrapped up in a simple PHP script. While you don't necessarily have to be an experienced PHP programmer to work with templates, being able to read PHP code and having HTML and CSS skills are usually prerequisites for all but simple template modifications. In this video, we'll go over how to begin the template modification process, where all of the files are, and the best way to make changes to those files. The good news is that the Joomla Template Manager provides you with a simple interface for editing the template files from within the backend. Even so, we have no way to make backups or roll back changes. Any small error here has major effects on the front end. First, we'll begin with the relatively simple Milky Way template. To look at the template code, click on the template in the Template Manager. Now we have the option of editing the HTML and the CSS. The HTML file is meant to control the order and the layout of elements on the page. Think of this as the skeleton of the template. The CSS files are meant to control the details of exact position, color, font, size, and other appearance-related factors. For example, if you want to add or remove a module position, you would do this in the HTML. If you want to change the border, background color, or font size of something, you would do this in the CSS file. Let's look at the HTML for the Milky Way template. To do this, click on the Edit HTML button. This presents us with a very simple text editor screen and loads it with the HTML for this template. Before doing anything, we suggest that you copy and paste all of this code into Notepad or another simple text editor on your computer before you make any changes. Since there is no backup made, you might end up needing a copy of the original available so you can restore it in case of any issues. Now, let's quickly have a look at the structure of the HTML file. First, there's quite a lot of PHP code embedded here. Wherever you see the PHP begin tag and the PHP end tag, the web server will run this code and the resulting page will contain the output. To put it another way, PHP usually displays content that changes. Everything that is outside of the PHP tags will just be sent to the web browser as is. The first chunk of PHP code is something we see in most templates. This simply contains comments and restricts visitors from seeing the template file directly. Then we have a standard HTML header. As you can see, there is some PHP code here to insert Joomla-related information into pages that will be sent to the web browser. It inserts things like site language, additional headers, etc. The template here checks some of the parameters and decides which CSS file to load as a result. As we continue through the file, we can see that each HTML element is either a class or an ID. This is how it is tagged for later reference in the CSS files. So, if you see an element that you would like to change, you can find it in the HTML, identify its ID or class, and note it for editing in the CSS file. Let's have a look at this line of HTML code related to positions. This JDoc tag is a special tag used inside of Joomla templates. It tells Joomla to perform a special Joomla-related function at this point in the HTML file. Here, the JDoc-include command is used to signal that Joomla should insert a module named top here. This is exactly where, in the template position top is told where to appear. It may not be easy to change without background in HTML and CSS, but at least you can find it and know something about where it is positioned inside the template HTML. If you make any changes, you can, of course, apply or save them and check the front end to see the result. You can also paste in your backup copy and save it if you broke anything with any changes. That covers the basics for the HTML file. Next, we'll have a look at the CSS files, which are used to control the finer details of how these elements actually look on the page. A template can have more than one CSS file, and most do. Template developers do this because it's actually very good web development practice to organize your CSS. CSS controls positioning on the screen as well as background images, text color, and other factors. Because it handles so much, splitting up the CSS files into separate ones allow the template designer to write good CSS code as well as provide complex template variations based on parameters. So, let's have a look at one of the CSS files. For this template, the most important file is the template.css. Each template will vary, so you may need to consult the documentation or otherwise experiment on your own. Let's edit the template.css file now. Of course, we always want to select all and copy it to a text editor so we have a backup just in case we make some errors. Anything with a pound or hash symbol corresponds to an HTML ID. Anything with a dot before it corresponds to an HTML class. For example, the CSS code for center class simply uses the text align property to tell the text where to be centered. The CSS defines the properties for all of the elements included in the template. If you need to change one, you would need to find what the class or ID is, then find it here in the CSS. Now let's close the file and look at another one. If we chose the red CSS file and open it up for editing, we can see that it contains all of the CSS code that relates to the red variation of this template. If we set that variation in the template parameters in the template manager, we would actually be instructing the template to load this file. The rules for this are in the template HTML file. The result of all of this is red.css is loaded when we select the appropriate parameter. As you can see, this file tells various elements such as the menu module to load the red versions of the background images. The template developer has collected all of the CSS code for the red template variation here and has done a good job of keeping it relatively small and simple. A skilled web designer would be able to adapt these various properties quickly to allow them to change the look and the feel of the red variation of the template. So, that covers the basic HTML and CSS editing in templates. While HTML and CSS are professional disciplines in themselves, and web design is something that takes a while to master, it's important to know where our template files are stored and how to navigate around inside them.